Hello, and welcome to a pretty long, mostly uncut video of the progression of loose leash walking for the first time in the outdoors. So we've practiced a lot of loose leash walking inside where there are very low distractions, very minimal distractions. So then I wanted to take it outside and see how it applied outside. So I taught all of the basics indoors, like leash pressure, in the proper position to be in, and now I'm taking it outside and seeing how she does with that and applying all of the basics there too. I wanted to give you the whole video because I wanted you to see how I progressed through this. So at first, when we first step outside, and typically if you're in a house, this is your driveway, I will stop and let the dog just look at the world, smell the smells, see what's going on, because I can't just ask them to immediately go into obedience and start paying attention to me when the world is nice and distracting. That's just not very fair. So I give them some time to sniff around the driveway, the front yard, look at what's happening, sniff some smells in the air, which today was very windy, so there were lots of smells flying around. And I am also utilizing the basic of if you pull towards the thing that you want, we will not go towards that thing. So you'll see she turns the leash pressure on. I try to hold it. She's a little strong, but I hold that leash pressure. And then once she re-engages with me, she gets a treat. When a dog pulls towards something and then gets to it, they have just rewarded themselves for pulling. And what is rewarded is repeated. So I don't want her to, at any point in time during this session, be able to pull towards something and get to it and be able to smell it or to pee on it or to eat it. She did not try to eat anything, but sometimes that's what they want to do with something that they found in the grass. I will also use those 180-degree turns with her. So sometimes when she pulls towards something, I will turn on my heel and go back the other way, which is again reinforcing the idea that if you pull towards that thing, we will not go to that thing. We can eventually get to that thing if you walk with me. However, pulling is not the answer to get there. So then as she walks with me to the grass, we can investigate the grass. I know you can't hear me in this video, and I like it when you're able to hear me so that you can see what I'm saying and when I say it. But typically every time I reward her, I have just said yes right beforehand to mark the thing that she's doing as the correct thing, and then giving her a treat for that thing. I just wait her out, and then she comes back, she gets a treat. I also like to make sure that they get to go potty before we actually start doing like heel work or like focusing work, because it's very hard to focus when you have to use the restroom. She hits the end of the leash, I turn around 180 degrees, we go back the other way. Dogs are very rewarded by where they have not been yet, new things that they can smell and interact with. They are not so rewarded by places they have already been or smells they have already smelled. Again, I still make sure to give her plenty of time to smell as long as she keeps the leash loose, because it would be very unfair of me to ask her to ignore the entire environment and work with me at this point in time. So then once we start focusing more on walking, I am doing those 180-degree turns with her. I find that when she's quite distracted, just stopping and waiting her out, she will stand there for a good bit of time, just smelling the air and watching things, which is fine. But when we're looking to get results and progress, the 180-degree turns work a little bit better for her, and we're actually walking at that point versus just staring into the distance. And then she starts to turn with me, so now she's keeping me in her peripheral. And instead of hitting the end of the leash, she starts to anticipate when I turn, and she turns with me, and I will reward her with food. I leash pressure her into a sit. She does so. She just got a little too distracted there, so I wanted her in a sit to kind of chill out for a moment. And I'm just reinforcing there that when the leash pressure turns on, it means something, versus just, oh, well, you hit the end of the leash. And I'm not looking for eye contact. I haven't trained her to do that, but she does start to offer it. And I really like that, so I will reward her pretty well for that. So my ideal walk, just for reference, for my personal dogs, how I like to walk is I like them in kind of a loose heel most of the time. They're welcome to go off to the side to be able to sniff and do whatever, or to potty when they need to. But being in that general area of a heel is my preference. And then when I want to give them the full length of the leash and let them go explore, because that's important as well, I will release them from the heel and I will motion towards the grass or give them a release word like free, or okay. And then they know that they can go a little further away from me and not have to stick to my side. So I alternate between those two things when I do walks with my own personal dogs. That's my own preference. Some people prefer to keep their dog in a heel the entire time on a walk, but I think enrichment is very important as well. So I like to change it up. I like to have some structure and then some unstructured enrichment in my walks, which is why you'll see me throw in some sits and obedience in here too, is to keep some structure in that walk. What I also like to do is have a structured bit of a walk. So walking in a heel, walking nicely at my side, and then reward them with a bit of an unstructured walk. So giving them that freedom to walk around more freely, maybe in front of me, maybe on my other side, all of these different things, being able to sniff and investigate different things and kind of following their lead versus them following my lead. I like to reward them with that type of freedom for a job well done during the structured part of the walk. Sometimes when you start leash walking, you don't make it very far because you're doing those 180-degree turns and you're stopping and you're waiting. And so when you're starting to do loose leash walking, I highly recommend having an easy goal, not worrying about how far you get, but how long you're working with your dog. Because when you're working on structure during walks, you are also working your dog mentally versus just physically when you take them on a walk where they pull you around and get to go wherever they want to go. So you're not only physically working with them, you are also mentally working with them, and that is just as much, if not more, tiring than physically walking your dog. Just physically walking your dog, I mean, versus training at the same time. Sometimes when I work with young puppies who have very short attention spans, I do not make it further than the next house down. And I think that that's okay. If we had a good 10 to 20 minutes of being able to sniff around the front yard and then a couple of 180-degree turns, and then I get a little bit of a loose leash walk out of them, and they've had a good time and they've learned something, I think that that's a good walk, and I'll take them back in. And then maybe later we'll do it again. So you can take multiple shorter walks if you need to, versus one long walk throughout the day. Now at this point, what I'm starting to do is, as she gets in front of me and I can tell that she's not paying attention to where I am anymore, I will either stop and she'll hit the end of the leash because she wasn't paying attention, or I will make a 180-degree turn and she will keep trying to go forward because she's not paying attention and then realize that I have left her. So then as she starts anticipating me turning and she turns with me versus hitting the end of the leash, then I reward her at my side as she turns with me. I also wanted to reinforce that even if we are on grass, I am still looking for her to be mostly by my side. Because sometimes if you practice on a sidewalk for a long period of time, and then you always let them free in the grass to go wherever they'd like, it doesn't translate into the grass. So I wanted to do that too. This is a moment where I had to hold leash pressure for quite some time because she started staring off into the distance. It's just slightly uncomfortable so that she can feel it. She knows that it's there. And then eventually she says, "Oh yeah, I remember what that means." So it's just slight upwards pressure. She does not need much. The thing is that you hold it until she does sit, and then it turns off the leash pressure when her butt hits the ground. That's the important part, not how much leash pressure you're giving her. And being able to leash pressure a sit in this environment is harder than inside of the training center because it is more distracting. And I don't know if she would sit if I verbally asked her to, but she is more likely to be able to sit, except for that one moment where she stared off for quite some time, via the leash pressure, than me trying to get her attention verbally, especially because it's so windy and there's so many cars and this and that and there's smells and it's very distracting. But overall, she did super good. She always does super good. She's just a good girl.